This is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Very glad you're able to spend some time with us on a bit of a cloudy, cool day out there. We're supposed to see the sun for much of the day today. Clouded over there just a few minutes ago, but we're only looking at a high today around 0. That's about 4 degrees below normal. Coming from earlier in the week, of course, where we had that storm come through and we had those double-digit temperatures and all that wind and all the snow melted, and now we're plunging back into the cold on the last full day of winter. Tomorrow is the first day of spring. I think it comes in at something like 11:30 or close to that time in the morning, and again, it'll be not that warm out there. It'll be 0 according to the forecast. And again, that normal temperature for this time of the year is around 4. Looking forward into the weekend, and I wish I had some better news for you. Now, I don't think you're going to have to shovel anything, but it looks like we're going to be in for a bit of a washout this weekend. Showers and even flurries on Saturday, rain on Sunday. Alistair Alders, our meteorologist, will be here tomorrow to set up your weekend forecast. I hope that you can join us when he joins us to talk about that. Now, the aftermath of what we experienced earlier in the week with that melt and that rain and all the wind that we saw has obviously resulted in some infrastructure damage. They're still working on these. They were this morning when I came in, still working on those utility poles on Bears Road that had been snapped or cracked at least in that storm that we had earlier in the week. I saw some pictures yesterday on the Supper Time News from places like Truro and some other of the places that we see traditional flooding in the spring. That is happening, and I know that impacts some of you. And I hope that all your basements are staying dry. And this wet weekend not likely to impact it too much. It looked like the Sackville River was pretty high, but not at flood stage yesterday. I don't know if that's changed this morning. But we're going to get some more water, and the converse of that, the silver lining in the storm cloud, is that we need the rain, right? We know that we are in that drought condition for much of last year, and we saw wells dry up. We saw fire bans and restrictions because of it. We saw many people having to truck water in, and let's hope that this is going to help that situation moving into the summer, because we certainly don't want to have another spring fire season like we saw last year. The talker today, of course, was the news that broke late last night about Rick Burns, who, of course, is the MLA for Hammonds Plains and Lucasville. He put out a statement last night saying that he and his wife fell victim to blackmail. In the statement, Mr. Burns wrote that criminals hacked his email and then asked for money, and then his family refused to pay for it. So they released intimate pictures of Mr. Burns and his wife that they had somehow accumulated from one of his devices or some of his devices. He went on to say to have such intimate images accessed and released is a gross violation of our privacy and is completely unacceptable. This is bigger than me. It's a gross violation of my wife's privacy, and we are both victims of a grotesque crime. He went on to say, I realize that being an elected official comes with increased scrutiny. No one signs up for having their privacy violated in this manner. No politician's partner deserves to be targeted this way. Law enforcement is involved and is investigating the matter. The Premier also putting out a statement last night with regards to this and writes that no one should ever be subjected to this kind of violation. When criminals target public officials with blackmail, they're attempting to compromise the people Nova Scotians have chosen to represent them and shake the very core of our democracy. We cannot and will not accept a climate where serving your community and public life makes you or your family a target for extortion. He went on to say, I have full confidence in law enforcement to investigate this matter thoroughly and to hold those responsible to account. Our government will always stand against any attempt to intimidate, coerce, or blackmail those who serve the public. And that from the office of the Premier last night. This is a terrible situation, but it's not unheard of anymore. And it's in my opinion, it's out of bounds. No matter what your political stripe is, no matter what your take on things is, no matter what your beliefs are, this is just way beyond the line. Now, we don't know, and we probably, folks, we've done a number of segments on this show about these kind of scams and how to protect yourself on this, and they continue to get more complex. They continue to be ahead of the curve when it comes to the way that we can defend these things. But at the end of the day, we don't know if this was politically motivated. We don't know if this was just somebody that is hacking a lot of people and just happened to get into this account. But none of that should matter. This just shouldn't be an accepted behavior in this world. We've seen a couple of instances of political intimidation tactics, I think, here in the past, right? And targeting the families of politicians, in my opinion, and I would imagine in many of your opinions, is out of bounds. If you have a problem with a policy, if you have a problem with the way a jurisdiction, be it the city, be it the province, be it the federal government, is being governed, then you have absolutely every right to question that person that's doing that, the person in charge or the person that's been elected to public office. It's as the MLA said, that Rick Burns said that you are opening yourself to public scrutiny when you step into a public office, and I think that's part of democracy is to stand up to the decisions that you make or that your government makes. But to get into the weeds of blackmailing people and asking for money and hacking their personal emails and so on and so forth is disgusting, quite frequently, or quite honestly. And I think that I hope that and the way that I think this stops is that we have an investigation and that the parties get named. And we find out who this was. Was this somebody from Nova Scotia? Was this some international hacking ring? I don't know. But it seems that these crimes either go unpunished or we just don't ever hear about it. I'll leave that up to you. Maybe something you want to talk about when we open up the telephone lines a little bit later today. Bit of a scary story that emanated out of Bridgewater yesterday. Did you see the reporting on this? There was a plot that was uncovered. That was going to be a simultaneous attack that was being planned by some youngsters. I think the person in Bridgewater was 15, between a school in Bridgewater and a school in Rivers, Manitoba, I do believe the town's name is. These youngsters are alleged to have been working together to come up with some sort of plot to attack a school. The FBI and NSA and a bunch of lettered organizations globally have uncovered it and handed that information over to Bridgewater Police and police in Manitoba. And the persons responsible or the persons alleged to be responsible were arrested. And this attack was not imminent, according to the police officers. They say that some thought had gone into it and planning had been involved in it. They searched a home in Bridgewater and found some handwritten plans, some imitation weapons, and fake pipe bomb and a fake assault rifle, and some clothing with hate symbols, and the list goes on and on and on. So it looks like this has been thwarted. It's certainly reminiscent, albeit not necessarily at the same level of preparedness than that plot that we saw that was stopped at almost the very last second that had targeted the Halifax shopping center years ago. It's a scary world out there, folks, and I'm sure glad that despite all of the tensions and back and forth between our two countries, that the police agencies are still sharing this kind of information, because that could have been a pretty significant tragedy if it had gone and had come to fruition. Anyway, that's from police today. The war in Iran, day 20, I do believe it is. I just watched a Pentagon briefing with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who spent a good portion of the beginning of that news conference, again, lambasting the media. Then we got some details from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about the ongoing progress with the war in Iran, and to be just from my 50,000-foot view, didn't seem like they had a whole lot new to report, saying that today's going to be the biggest strike package, which we've heard each and every time that I think they've had a briefing from the Pentagon. But we do know that the oil prices are on the rise after a gas refinery in Qatar had been hit overnight, or over the last day. 2 oil refineries have caught fire in Kuwait, not necessarily because of missile hits, but some of these fires starting from debris that rains to the earth when those interceptor missiles go up to take out drones and ballistic missiles. The Israelis attacking a facility in Iran yesterday, apparently without the knowledge of the United States. The president of the United States saying today that won't happen again. There's a ship on fire off the UAE, another hit off of Qatar, again with debris. Air raid sirens sounding in Israel for the last 24 hours off and on, and that is having an effect on oil prices, folks. We know that the UARB, or the Energy Board, is going to set prices here in Nova Scotia tonight. Over in New Brunswick, that happened yesterday. Supposed to happen yesterday. They had an interrupter clause over there that saw diesel go up above $2.30 a liter. We're going to get our stuff set here at midnight tomorrow, and I'm going to suggest that it's going to be painful, given the fact that world oil prices are on the rise. I took a quick look before I came on the air today. Brent crude, which you listened to our interview yesterday with Larry Hughes, who studies these things. And it seems that gasoline prices in Nova Scotia that are regulated by the Energy Board tend to mirror that of Brent crude, which is the international benchmark. WTI is always a little bit less, and it's quite significantly less today than Brent is. That's the American market, the West Texas market. Anyway, Brent crude at $113.07 a barrel. That's an increase of 5.3% day over day. WTI is up about 1.1%. Gasoline in New York is up another 2.4% this morning. So I'm going to suggest that when we see our regulated gas products reset at midnight, that we're going to see another increase, and it could be painful, with no end in sight to the war in Iran. And it seems that oil infrastructure and energy targets continue to come onto the list just about every day now. Busy show planned for you on this Thursday edition. I'm glad you're able to spend some time with us. We're going to dig in a little bit more into what energy prices mean and what it's going to impact our prices at the grocery store. The food professor is going to join us. Claudia Chender is also here today, the NDP leader, likely smiling after we saw yesterday from Angus Reid an 11-point drop in the popularity of Premier Houston here in Nova Scotia. And when we come back, a conversation with the representative of District 2 in our part of the world, in HRM. That's Lawrencetown, the Lakes Chezzetcook Eastern Shore. Councillor David Hendsbee, concerned now that when we eliminated the bridge tolls and we moved Halifax Harbour Bridges into a Crown Corporation, that there's a lack of public oversight. A conversation with Councillor Hendsbee when we come back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. guest has been a longtime politician, a longtime city councillor, and has spent the better part of 2 decades on the Bridge Commission, which will soon no longer be. It will be folded into a crown corporation within the provincial government. This, of course, after the provincial government took the tolls off of the bridges and said that they were going to start to pay for things like maintenance and such on the bridge. Very pleased to welcome back to the show our friend and District 2 Councillor, that's David Hendsbee. David, how are you?
Good morning, Dan.
This is an end of an era, right? You've been on that committee for 20 years.
Yes, I've seen a lot of changes happening to the bridge commissions over the years and stuff, and it's going to be sad to see that as it's been for the last since 1950, the bridge commission will be no more, and it become a part of Link Nova Scotia, the new regional joint transportation agency.
Any concern that when the feds or the provincial government takes over things that they tend to mess things up?
Well, I'm more concerned about the oversight and transparency that the Link Nova Scotia will provide. I'm hoping that we'll have an advisory panel, perhaps the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, our municipal partners or neighbors around us like Lunenburg and Kings County and Hants East, Hants West and Colchester and Halifax. Will we have any opportunity for input for oversight for Link Nova Scotia? We're going to have senior bureaucrats involved with Link Nova Scotia, but I'm always good to see that civilian oversight as well, because when the Bridge Commission was first set up way back in the day, City of Halifax, City of Dartmouth had 2 representatives each, but then after amalgamation, we reduced that to 1 representative each, and then a couple more citizen appointments. So we always had that public oversight on the bridge maintenance and bridge projects, stuff like that. But now it's going to be a departmental issue, and I'm hoping that the provincial government will provide adequate funding that it needs to provide the Bridge Commission or the former Bridge Commission or the Halifax Harbour Bridges the necessary funds to do the repairs and maintenance that's needed, as well as get on with the planning of a new McKay Bridge.
It always is a concern to me, David, when we start to move things from the public realm into the realms of the bureaucrats, and we have unelected officials that are making decisions that, let's face it, those bridges are a lifeline for us here in HRM.
Yeah, the 2 superstructures are very important. We see what happens when one gets delayed opening. I've seen many changes over the bridges. I've seen it go from tokens to MacPass. We're about to introduce electronic tolling. We would have been cashless tolling altogether, but that was squashed when the government decided to go toll-less altogether. And so that put those plans aside. I've seen the McDonald Bridge go from 2 lanes to 3 lanes to have an outside bikeways and sidewalks and protective security barriers. And so that was a great advance for the McDonald Bridge. The old bridge became basically the newer bridge, and with the new redecking it got, it's going to probably last for another 75 to 100 years. So, but the problem though is the McKay Bridge. It's coming to its life cycle end, and we need to look at the planning of replacing it now. It's going to take 6 or 7 years before you can put the first piece of metal on the ground to do that. We got to look at the corridors, which way we're going to go, north or south of the McKay Bridge, define what that corridor is going to be, start acquiring the properties that are required. So those things need to be negotiated starting very soon.
David, as I understand it, somewhere between $36 and $40 million a year came off of that bridge, off the bridges with tolls. The province has said that they were going to absorb that for things like maintenance and for these projects that you're telling us about. I guess the first question is that there were people that worked for Halifax Harbour Bridges. Have you heard if they're going to keep their jobs?
Yes, all the staff have been absorbed into the Department of Lake Nova Scotia with the Nova Scotia Public Works. So there's no job losses for our employees. I'm glad to see that, because I think our employees are top-notch staff in regards to know how to those bridge operate and stuff. So I think the province has its own track record of bridges elsewhere in the province, but I think our Halifax bridges stand above all of the rest, and we've proved that with the staff we had to maintain them over these many years.
Any idea, David, from your position as a commissioner, how much the province would have spent to take the toll booths and all of that infrastructure out?
It was a couple $1 million. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a few $1 million. But I'm surprised at how quickly we were able to do it. We were told during the campaign that it's going to be a campaign promise. The government got elected. Then they told us the date, and we had. It's incredible how fast we were able to do that with the contractors to eliminate the toll booths and patch up the plazas and have traffic continuously flowing while this is all advancing.
And now that's created another problem on the other side that you and the rest of your council colleagues are trying to deal with, and that's an increase of people going across the bridge because it's free and adding to the congestion problem.
Well, we've seen, I believe, an increase of almost 12% in traffic volume in regards to that. But we were kind of hoping the traffic volumes get back up in place, pre-pandemic era. So we knew traffic would be coming back, but it certainly jumped back with the free tolls. But I'm hoping that the province will learn from these decisions they're making and make sure we have adequate infrastructure going to and from the bridge. The bridges aren't the bottleneck anymore. It's going to be the infrastructure coming to and from the bridges that we have to address. Like the Windsor Street interchange is going to be a colossal configuration we're now underway doing. That's one thing we're looking at doing. The province is looking at doing a corridor study of the bridges and stuff, as well as the main corridor in Halifax through Robie Street and stuff. So hopefully those studies they do will just magnify some of the decisions we've been making about trying to improve transit as option for people crossing the harbour.
David, as I mentioned off the top, you've been around a minute or two in politics, both at the provincial level and at the municipal level, and are on your victory lap. Can we call it that? Anyway,
three years to go. 3 more years to go. That's November 28 now. I'm not up the door yet.
Fair enough. That being said, this is you've said going to be your last term in council. Do you think, in your experience and in your opinion, that the bridges will be better off as part of the provincial government, or do you think they would have been better off the way they were?
That's yet to be seen. I believe that the government right now, the provincial government now has the onus to get on with their plans with the Regional Joint Transportation Authority. That's something when I was a member of the John Hamm government back in 1999-2003, we talked about having a Regional Joint Transportation Authority back then. But then here it is 25 years later, it finally gets announced and implemented. So hopefully the provincial government will put the resources behind Lake Nova Scotia and do what's necessary. I think there's a lot of transit options we need to incorporate. Like I've been advocating for years, we need more park and rides in the suburban rural areas. If you want to keep traffic from coming into downtown, you got to provide alternatives. And the best way is to park and ride terminals. Let's get them built.
David, just switching gears very quickly on you here. Speaking of traffic coming in, last couple of weeks here on Councillors on the Hot Seat, we've heard concerns from residents in your neck of the woods about a roundabout at Lake Major Road. Can you bring us up to date on that?
Yes, we looked at two options. The reconfiguration of the traffic lights. Ross Road interchange has been a problem ever since the traffic lights went in there back in 1996. And ever since that time, I've been advocating for realignment of the Ross Road intersection. So we finally, the property owners have changed hands 4 times over that period of time. We finally got an agreement with the latest property owner, local property owner of Kell Developments. Very grateful for their cooperation. So now we got the corridor acquired. Now that it came down to design work. Traffic lights versus roundabout. The problem is in this particular area, it's become a speed zone. It's when you're coming off of Main Street, from a 60 zone, you're going towards the 107 highway where it's a 100-kilometer zone. People are going through there more than 60 kilometers. They're going 70, 80, 90, 100, even more than 110 at times and stuff. We had one time a police radar trap there. Dozens of cars were pulled over, but the problem is the police can't be there every time. The traffic lights will not stop the speeders. I've seen too many times people speeding through the lights. So a roundabout was an effective way of trying to slow the traffic down, but also have a continuous flow of traffic. So therefore, all areas, Lake Major Road, Ross Road, can get out safely into the flow of traffic and not have to wait and play Russian roulette like it used to be, or as it is still today. But hopefully this will be done in the next couple of years. So.
Any concern, though? A couple of the people that have called, David, have said that this is going to create a bigger traffic headache, and we're in danger of it becoming the mess that is the morning and afternoon commute at the Armdale roundabout.
Well, the intention of the roundabout in this area is at the gateway or the lynch point between, like I said, the number 7 highway and the 107 highway. It has to be a gradual speed reduction zone. And a roundabout the most effective way of doing that. But there'd be, like I said, a continuous flow of traffic. These studies will show the traffic lights will stop and go traffic, where a roundabout's continuous flow of traffic. So we'll see what happens with that. But we also got to remember down the road, the province is looking at doing the 107 Cherry Brook bypass. They're right now doing the 107 extension from Burnside to Lake Loon.
Yep.
Eventually, over the next couple of years, we're going from Lake Loon up to exit 17 at East Preston, the 107 highway. So eventually, there could be an alternative bypass, so people wouldn't have to worry about a roundabout in a number of years from now. But whenever the province gets to finish that corridor, that's still probably a decade away. But in the meantime, we need to look at safer traffic measurements, and the roundabout was deemed to be the safer the option. It might be in $1 million more, but I think it's worth the lives it's going to save, because in the light intersection you have 32 points of conflict, whereas roundabout you only have 8 points of potential conflict areas. It's a much safer option, and in the long run I think it's going to prove to be the better option.
What's the price tag on it?
About $5 million versus $4 million for an intersection realignment, because even the traffic lights that are there now would have to be reconfigured for a new section alignment and stuff. So people think the traffic lights as they are now would work. No, they won't. They have to be reconfigured, rewired, and everything else. So there's still an expense of that. Plus, you have future maintenance costs of traffic lights that need to be constantly upgraded or repaired or replaced. So a roundabout doesn't have that. Plus, when the power goes out in these areas, a roundabout doesn't require any electricity, whereas traffic lights do. So I think that roundabout will be the safer option in the long run and improve itself.
Power never goes out in Nova Scotia, does it? David, I appreciate the time.
No trouble at all, Dan. Have yourself and the listeners a good day this last day of winter, and may spring be always blossom in your face, all right?
There you go. Thanks, David. District 2 Councillor David Hendsbee. Time for us to break. When we come back, Claudia Chender, the leader of the Nova Scotia NDP, will be your guest. You're listening to The Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. See you after the news. Welcome back as we continue along here on the Friday Eve edition of the program. Don't forget, after the news at 11, we're going to open up the telephone lines for the open hour, the Thursday open hour. Look forward to our conversation. And as usual, regular rules apply. If you want to bring something to the table, I look forward to that conversation. We saw some new data that kind of reinforced what I think many of us we're thinking here in Nova Scotia with regards to the budget and the Premier's decisions on the budget, and people not happy with the budget, I think is the best way to describe that. The data that we saw yesterday showed that the Premier's popularity rating had dropped by 11 points to 39%. That's a significant drop, moving him into the lower third across the country when it comes to the popularity of premiers. The leader of the official opposition in Nova Scotia is also the leader of Nova Scotia's New Democrats, and that, of course, is Claudia Chender. Claudia, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
Well, this kind of reinforces what many were thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows just how unpopular this budget is. And it's something we've been hearing from people in every corner of the province since it was released, certainly with sort of increasing alarm in more recent days. And I think, people are waking up to the fact that this government didn't do the work to figure out the impact of what these choices that they've put forward in the budget are. They can't really seem to explain them, and Nova Scotians are demanding better, which they should.
I said yesterday when those numbers came out that political parties, they do their own polling and likely saw some of the same numbers that this public poll showed, Claudia, and that, I think, was a big factor in the decision for the Premier to reverse course on some of those cuts and issue that mea culpa.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know, on your station and many others, there are ads running that we've all paid for, sort of letting people know that the Premier has apologized and rolled back cuts and everything's fine. That's not true. So some of the cuts have been rolled back. Some of the worst cuts And that was in the face of families having to kind of give press conferences and talk about how horrific the impacts of those disability supports and losing those disability supports would be. No family should have to do that. And furthermore, I would say, this is on the heels, a day before he rolled it back, his MLAs were all over social media defending those cuts and saying that they were fine. So yes, some of the worst decisions have been rolled back, but many haven't. So many of the supports for food security, supports for, the domestic violence court, supports for actions mandated by the Mass Casualty Commission, supports for a huge swath of arts and culture and tourism, all of that remains cut. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear the impact that that's going to have. And so at a time when we have a big deficit and a revenue problem, tourism is one of our most reliable revenue sources. And what's become clear is that that's really being imperiled by these cuts. And seemingly, the Houston government didn't do the work to figure that out before they decided to make them. And so, again, I think all of this goes back to why the public has taken such an interest and are so upset in the way things are unfolding right now.
Claudia, I understand the pain that was caused by these decisions and then this reversal, right? I understand that people in the community are upset. There are still some that are facing cuts, but there will be others on the other side of the argument that will suggest that this is how government is supposed to work, that they're supposed to listen to the people.
Yeah, I don't think they've done that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So I think, one of the things people have been saying for years now, certainly we've been saying it, the Auditor General has been saying it, is that this is a government that is really sort of allergic to transparency. And so year after year, they're spending $1 billion outside of the budgeted process, outside of transparent oversight. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, particularly in healthcare, outside of regular procurement. And so, it's not that we're not saying we don't need to spend money in healthcare. Sure we do. Of course we do. That's why this government was elected. But are we getting value for that money? Well, that's not really clear. So, it started years ago with Hogan Court, this transitional care facility that, everyone from independent consultants, the Auditor General, said was a terrible value for money. Not that the facility is bad, but could we have done it more effectively and more cheaply? Probably. Now we have one patient, one record rolling out at the IWK, and by all accounts, it's a mess. Do we need digital record keeping? Absolutely. Do we need to be contracting a U.S. company owned by Larry Ellison with very little oversight and hundreds of millions of dollars to do it? I don't think we're clear about that. So it's not easy, but the first step in getting our financial house in order is transparency, not a million cruel little cuts to arts and culture and disability. And we haven't even talked about African Nova Scotia and Mi'kmaq communities and programs that benefit those communities. Those cuts are not going to make a material difference in this deficit. The deficit's, over $1 billion. These cuts might be $100 million. So it's real money. It's important. But I would suggest that we would do a lot better to address that deficit if we just had a basic level of transparency required.
Claudia, I don't know if you've seen it. The Fraser Institute released a report today on the size of government, which is a measure, as I understand it, of government spending versus GDP. And Nova Scotia is by far has the biggest number at 61%. Do you think government is too much of the economy? Do you think our government's too big?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I haven't seen that report, Dan. But what I will say is, certainly there's lots of measures that are being put forward that are being discussed less about just that. So there is going to be a contraction of the public service under this government. Yeah. So certainly this government is looking at that. But also, those are jobs. And as much as the premier wants to talk about a resource economy and a future of fracking and, all the different plans they have, there's no private sector interest in any of that at this point. So it's speculative, and it might happen, but it might not happen. And in the meantime, people need jobs. And, that size of government in lots of ways has shielded us from some of the impacts that BC and Ontario are feeling from the tariffs, for instance. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, we need more innovation. We need more private sector job creation. I think everyone would agree on that. But what is this government doing? Well, they're starving our university sector. That's where the innovation comes from. I think the fundamental disagreement I have with the Premier is that he wants to unlock our resource economy by fracking and, oil and gas. And I believe that our biggest resource is our people. And that if we give them the resources that they need, that they will continue to create amazing things. We have a world-class battery researcher. We have all kinds of amazing innovation and tech that comes out of Nova Scotia, but we're not supporting the places that allow that to happen. And I think that's what we need to do.
Claudia, we're out of time. I appreciate yours today.
Okay, thanks so much, Dan.
That is Claudia Chender, the leader of the official opposition. And, of course, that is the leader of the Nova Scotia New Democrats. We're going to take another break. When we come back, oil prices continue to soar. They're up big again today. What's that going to mean when we see the next food inflation report? The last one showed it slowing, and that was before the war. Conversation with the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, after the break. Welcome back as we continue to watch the events unfold in the Middle East. We continue to watch the daily reports of what the activity is and the impacts on the energy production capability in that part of the world, right? The Strait of Hormuz. We saw a couple of gas facilities and oil facilities hit yesterday on both sides of this conflict, and that is as oil prices across the world up again today, almost 5%. Brent crude is up, and it's up $5 a barrel. WTI is up $1.34 a barrel. Gasoline in New York is up about 2.2%, and that has been pretty much the way it's been all week. And we know that gasoline prices in Nova Scotia will be reset at midnight tonight, and I would expect, although you never really know for sure, but I would expect that we're going to see gasoline prices and diesel prices increase, which is, of course, going to have an impact not only on you as you fill up your tank, but on all of the companies that bring all of the goods that you and I consume to market in the back of a truck. And that, I think, is going to have an impact on inflation rates. We did see some food inflation numbers earlier this week, but as I said before the break, those numbers came in before this war started. So I would imagine, and I think there was some other mitigating factors in there as well. That being said, I would suspect that with the events of the last 20 days, we're going to see an impact on food price inflation in the next set of numbers. Very pleased, as always, to welcome to the program to give us a little perspective on that is the food professor. That's Sylvain Charlebois. Sylvain, how are you?
Hey, Dan, how are you?
I am good. I hear you're in the sunny south.
I am. I'm teaching at the University of South Florida for the week. I'm back next week, but it's a breezy 10 degrees here. So, in fact, earlier this week, it was actually warmer in Halifax than right here in Tampa Bay.
There you go. So you should have just come to Halifax, right?
Exactly. Looking forward to get back home.
Fair enough. Sylvain, we saw some numbers this week on inflation, and food inflation was down, but as I said in my preamble there, I don't suspect that trend will continue.
No, not really. So, at 5.4%, it is down from 7.3 in January, so good news. The problem is that we still have the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries, even if you take out the effects of the GST holiday a year ago, we would be probably at around 4%. That's still the highest among G7 countries. So still dealing with some food inflation issues. But of course, with the attacks in Iran, which started on February 28th, so we're almost 3 weeks in here, Gas prices are way up, and diesel prices are way up. It's very, very similar to what we experienced 4 years ago with Ukraine, by the way, with the exception that crop prices aren't moving all that much right now. Maybe a plus 2 to 5% on wheat, soy, barley, corn. So no major movements there. But because of the fertilizer situation, we see yields in Canada and North America, even in the United States where I am right now, drop, and that could actually push commodity prices higher later this year, basically telling markets that we may not produce as much as we were expecting.
That's something that gets lost in this discussion, right? Everybody's kind of super focused on the price of oil, and of course that's the immediate impact, but a lot of the world's fertilizer comes out of that area too.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people think that Canada is a sovereign country when it comes to fertilizers. Not really. When you need urea and sulfur, you need the Middle East. You need that Strait of Hormuz to work, to actually allow ships to flow through, and that's not happening right now. So there's thousands of ships just waiting to go through, and they should be going through right now to allow our farmers to get the inputs they need to produce the food we need. And that's not just in Canada, it's also in the U.S. as well.
I've read stories, Sylvain, about the impact of this global emergency, can we call it that? That on shipping in general, the price for shipping goods is going up through the roof, and we know that a lot of our stuff comes from ships that land here in Halifax and in Vancouver. Any concern that some of the cost of goods at the grocery store and at the other stores in the country are going to go up because of that?
I hate to say this, but again, going back to lessons learned in 2022 with the invasion of Ukraine, we're basically on the same path. And remember, Dan, we actually saw our food inflation rate reach 11% early 2023. The problem that we are facing right now, which is different than in 2022, is that the White House and President Trump is politicizing the issue of affordability, always downplaying the impact of energy costs affecting households in the U.S. and around the world. And that's forcing shipment companies to highball the price of energy. So if you get a phone call from Loblaw, say, and basically supported cold chain with produce or meat products, you're gonna actually charge more to make sure you make money, regardless what happens to oil prices. So this yo-yo effect that we're seeing on the market is actually going to cost more. It's actually worse than seeing a gradual increase of oil prices over time.
Sylvain, we know that this part of the world here in the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada have some of the highest food inflation rates in the country. Is that going to continue into the first half of the year?
Oh boy! So I want more bad news. Is that the theme this morning?
I don't see any good news in this. Really, I don't.
No, it's not. It hasn't been a good year, to be honest. And so yes, absolutely. So the Atlantic region is highly vulnerable to higher energy costs. There's no doubt in my mind, because we haul a lot of food into our region, and these trucks have to go back empty. So there's that double whammy when it comes to transportation costs that is making food in the Atlantic way more expensive. And of course, I've argued to the government in New Brunswick, the government in Nova Scotia, that we need to produce and process more food in our region to actually grant our region some sort of immunity against higher energy costs. But absolutely, I think later this year, we are expecting the Atlantic region to see some of the highest food inflation rates in the country, unfortunately.
Sylvain, do the retailers have a role to play here? I'm hearing some retailers in the region saying that they're going to, at least in the short term, are going to try and eat some of the increases because of the shipping costs and the energy costs. But the bigger retailers like the Sobeys and the Loblaw of the world, do they have a role to play in this? Can they help to keep the inflation rate lower?
Absolutely, of course. Now there's going to be a new no frills opening up in Dartmouth Crossing. we need more stores, more competition, more outlets, more independence. And in the meantime, the main chains should be playing a role. And they've actually invested heavily in the middle mile in distribution centers in recent years. Sobeys have done that. They've opened up some high-tech distribution centers. That could lower energy costs for them, and hopefully that will help us in the grocery store.
So then you say they should, but will they?
Here's my ask. Mr. Weston, Mr. Sobeys, please help us. That's what I can do right now.
Chances are we're not going to see a big change at the store, though, I would imagine.
Well, listen, we're all tight for cash. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
Now, of course, what's helping is the inflation rate at 1.8%, so the cost of living is not bad. Wages have actually gone up. That's another thing that we haven't heard much in the news these days. On Friday last week, StatsCan did release new numbers on wages, and wages are up 4% year to year on average in Canada, which is actually good news. The unfortunate news that, well, again, food inflation is above that. The cost of living is below that, but when you go to a grocery store, that's why a lot of people don't feel that they're getting ahead, because they're not making as much as they should. So certainly another message to governments and employers out there.
Sylvain, appreciate it. Enjoy your time in Florida.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Sylvain Charlebois is the food professor, of course, at the Food Analytics Lab over there at Dalhousie University. We're going to take a break. Blake's going to update us on the news. On the other side of it, we're going to open up the telephone lines. It's time for the Thursday Open Hour, your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. Got a concern about the size of government, and now we have new data to show it is really big in Nova Scotia. I'll break that all down right after the news. All right, welcome back. It's time for the open hour. Lines are now open, folks. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. A conversation earlier in the hour with Claudia Chender, the leader of the opposition here in Nova Scotia, and of course, the fallout from the recent polling that was released yesterday on the popularity of Premier Tim Houston, dropping 11 points. Which is a significant drop in popularity in the wake of the budget and the cuts and the aftermath. Not sure if that number will be completely rescued by his reversal on some of those cuts. I guess time will tell on that one. We've also been talking throughout the weeks here on the open hours about the size of government, and there's a new study that was released today from the Fraser Institute that measures the size of government in Canada. Now, it's not the number of actual politicians and people that are involved in the government. And by government, it's all three forms of government. It's the municipal government, the provincial government, and the federal government here in Nova Scotia. But the numbers compare the amount of spending that the government does, or the three levels of government do, in relation to that province's gross domestic product, or GDP. And the numbers released for 2024 today show that the size of government is relative to the economy among the provinces, ranging from a high of 61.2%, that's right here at home, folks, in Nova Scotia, to a low of 30.4% in Alberta. Canada as a whole, the size of government represents about 43.6% of our economy. So to break this down, at least into some form that I can understand, is that nationwide governments in Canada spend about 43.6% of what we produce. So just over 40%, $4 out of $10 produced in Canada are spent by the government. That is how they measure size of government in Canada. In Nova Scotia, that's 61%. So 61% of our GDP is government spending, which is an astronomically high number. And it leads us to some of the questions that we've been asking in the wake of said budget, right? We know that we're at $1.3 billion deficit. We know we're $27 or so billion in debt. We know that $1 billion every year of our tax money goes directly to pay the credit card. I know that's an analogy, but it makes sense to me. And the government is responsible for well over half, 61% of all the spending in the province as in relation to gross domestic product. Now, the numbers, I think, skew a little bit because Alberta is a province that has a high GDP, right? It's oil rich. We know that it's the richest province in the country when it comes to that stuff. And our GDP is minuscule, right? We're, what was it, 60th or 59th or 58th out of jurisdictions in all of North America. But it goes to show that our economy relies heavily on government investment. In fact, I would suggest too much. I'm interested in what your thoughts are, and if government is just too big for its britches, and our economy relies too much on one source of income, for lack of a better term. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. You can talk about that. You can talk about the revelation yesterday that an MLA for Hammonds Plains was victim of a cyber attack and had some intimate images stolen from devices and was held for blackmail. He suggests that that's out of bounds, and I don't think there's anybody that's going to disagree with it being out of bounds. The Premier says this could be an affront to democracy to hold public officials ransom or to blackmail public officials for money is completely out of bounds. Might be something you want to talk about. We've talked about scams like this a lot, and it seems to have been happening right here in our government. That or many other things. Food inflation, the cost of living. Boy, there's lots to talk about today, and we'll get right to it. Let's go to the phones, and we say hello this morning to Ed. Ed, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. I'm fine. Not why I called, but just first off, I'd like to give my admiration out to MLA Burns and his wife for standing up against the blackmailers.
It's easy to pay that, right, and just keep it quiet.
Well, it's probably a lot easier, but no, they absolutely did the right thing, and like I say, my admiration to them. Two things I called about. One, I find it kind of ironic that Donald Trump, when he not blackmails, but when he insults, bullies, and tariffs other countries, then expected them to show up and help him in a war he started in the Middle East. And
didn't tell him he was going to do it.
Oh, of course not. Why would he? He's right. Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And I think the most important part of my call here is Bill C-9,
mm-hmm.
which groups like the Canadian Civil Liberties Association are against, the CCF, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, and religious groups are against. It is maybe the greatest threat to our democracy, our freedom of speech, and our freedom of religion that we've ever seen. It paints things with a very wide brush and gives the government all kinds of margins for pushing us into thinking and saying what they want us to think and say.
Ed, I agree, and I think this is one of those bills that suggests that the devil in the details are the ones that really end up biting you, right? Because the genesis of this, I think, came from the right place when we're trying to protect people from cyber attacks and from hate speech and those kind of things. But some of the powers that this bill would give the government to do things without oversight and so on and so forth, I think is why there's been so much pushback on this.
Well, I mean, we've already seen in the Prime Minister's office more and more power being concentrated in that. So it's getting to the point where we're not electing a new government each year. Backbenchers don't matter. We're almost electing a new dictator each 4 or 5 years. We're electing a new dictator. And the government says, when it comes to Bill C-9 and how far they could take things, we'd never do that. But we've seen government say that one day and then go to the extremes the next day. Thanks, Dan. You have a good morning.
I appreciate it, Ed. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That bill is certainly a slippery slope. And as I said to Ed, I think it comes from the right place. I think that we need stronger laws to protect kids, protect minorities, to protect groups from hate speech and so on. But some of reading into that bill, some of the powers that it grants the Attorney General and the government of the day and the Prime Minister is a bit scary. And I think that's why you've seen so much pushback against C9. And I think that the process of that bill is starting to slow, and I think that it's going to probably take much longer to get through, if it gets through at all, given the situation of the government, because of that pushback from the people. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Brian.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Reason I'm calling today is I'm looking for maybe some assistance, or if there's anything we can do about it. But a couple nights ago, I was out driving through Enfield, and in front of the lumber yard there was this huge hole in the road, which I didn't see because it was filled with water and it was nighttime.
Right.
Anyway, I hit it, and it took the tire right off my car.
I imagine.
Dented the rim. I was stuck on the side of the road for about 3 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, the point is there anybody we can contact that for, what it cost me? Well, I ended up having to buy 4 new tires because, the other ones, they were already partly worn anyway. So, but that's not the point. Point is, I was just wondering, is there anybody I can contact to say, hey, listen, this is not my fault. This is your fault for not fixing the road.
I know there was
Brian.
I just want
to say this one thing.
Yeah.
When I took my car into the garage to get the tire replaced, the guy at that one garage said that he has dealt with 12 people himself that have been damaged by that hole. That's just one garage.
Yeah, no,
anyway.
I hear you. It's not just there. There was a crater on the 101 near Mount Uniacke the other day that had 5 or 6 cars pulled off to the side of the road. To your point, Brian, I know there had been discussion, at least at the municipal level, that you could contact, at least here in HRM, you could contact the 311 and that there was some kind of mechanism that was there that they could. But I've never heard of anybody being successful in getting their tire paid for. But if somebody has out there, give us a call, and I'm sure Brian will be listening for that info.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I called, actually, Dan. I'm hoping that somebody out there might be able to help.
Appreciate it, man. Sorry about your tire.
All right. No worries, man. Have a great day.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That mountain, sorry, not East Uniacke, Mount Uniacke. That hole, I think, comes up every year because I remember traffic stories about that being for several years that part of the highway tends to break and break tires when they do it. There are monsters out there, and we've talked about potholes a lot. And that monster on Lacewood that I raised a couple of weeks back and got fixed. Well, the fix didn't work, and it's coming back. And I would imagine anybody that has worked in pothole maintenance will tell you that the patching that they do in the wintertime at this time of the year before the asphalt plants are open is a temporary patch at the very least. And sometimes those patches just don't hold. Anyway, if anybody's had experience with going after the province or going after the city for your repair bill on your tire, let me know, because that's, I think, a valuable piece of information. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We are back after the break. Every once in a while here on the Todd Veinotte Show's open hours, we put out the call to arms, right? We ask for the knowledge that is out there in and amongst the space that is HRM and the surrounding areas of Nova Scotia to let us know if maybe there's a way we can do things. And it doesn't take long. I'll tell you what, our last caller saying that he was looking for some help with his tire, and if there's anybody that he could ask to perhaps help him out with that. And Julia gave us a call, and Julia, you have successfully gone after them.
Hi, yeah, I'm one of the few, I think.
Tell me how it works. Like, is it a form? Is it a process?
Yeah, so it's a form online. So it's through the government of Nova Scotia, and the form's called How to File a Claim for Vehicle or Property Damage.
Okay.
So you can just Google that. And if you scroll down in the form, there's a section all about if your vehicle was damaged driving over a pothole. So two things have to be true. The province had to be aware of the pothole, and they failed to repair it within the appropriate amount of time.
Okay.
So for me, I was driving out to the airport, and the pothole had started to be repaired, but it wasn't completed. And so I reported it, and they had known about it and hadn't finished that work in the right amount of time. So I got a check in the mail some months later.
How long did it take? Like months, you say?
Yeah, it took a couple of months. But you're supposed to report it, I think, within 30 days of the vehicle, of your tire popping. And so you just get an assessment from the dealership or from, wherever you get your tire fixed for how much a new one would cost.
Julia, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No problem. Have a good day.
I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. David Hendsbee, Councillor David Hendsbee sent me a note with regards to HRM. Julia's experience was with the province. Hendsbee says with an HRM, if you see or hit a pothole on an HRM street, then report it by calling 311 or using the HRM online form. If you have questions about it, you can call 311. You can also find answers to common questions and priorities and timelines. To make a claim against the municipality for any vehicle damage, you need to have called 311 to get a service request reference file number with your contact information, and HRM risk management team will be in contact with you. If you've incurred damage on a provincial highway, you may submit a claim to Insurance and Risk Management at the Department of Service Nova Scotia and Internal Services for consideration, and go through the process that Julia described to us. Asked and answered. Thanks, everybody. I truly appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We say hello to Dale. Dale, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am well. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, I'm a resident of Hubbard's, and are you familiar with? Can you close your eyes and drive through Hubbard's and get a wonderful feeling of what it looks like? I got
to tell you, Dale, and this is going to sound like you're a planted call, but I've often said and will continue to say that the stretch between Hubbard's and Chester is my favorite part of Nova Scotia.
Oh, right. Well, good. Well, then, I'm a resident of Hubbard's, and I just want to praise, first of all, there's a number of individual proprietorships and partnerships there that have done a great job. I'm just going to call them out and say that Black Harbor Distillery, Hazel's Independent Groceries, the Antique Shop, etc. I mean, the restaurants that are there, etc. Sheila's too, the beloved chip truck that are there.
For sure. Been there many times.
Places.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So these people have worked hard to establish and taken chances on coming into Hubbard's and creating these shops, and we're proud of them, and they've done a great job. They look fine. But, however, there's one shop or company, you could say, that has done absolutely nothing to better itself in 30 years in Hubbard's. You know what I'm talking about? You know what company that could be?
I think I do.
Yes, well, I think you do it, but I'll say it so you don't have to say it, or you might possibly say the wrong one. I don't know, but I just want to call out the Irving gas station in Hubbard's. They've shown contempt to the people of Hubbard's, to these proprietors who have worked hard to make these beautiful shops, and they've done absolutely nothing to better the site where the Irving gas station is for, I think, and what I've been told, 30 years. They've had a trailer.
Yeah, it's like a construction trailer. Yeah,
that's right. They have a beautiful shop in Chester. They have a beautiful gas station in Chester. They have one in Tantallon as well. Why can't they better their one in Hubbard's? And truly, I think it's showing contempt to not only the residents but to the other store owners who have worked hard. And here's, this is one of the best. This is one of the biggest companies in Eastern Canada, and they have a little terrible-looking gas station, and it makes Hubbard's. It's an eyesore, I believe. So I just wanted to make that observation to you and to the people, and just to let them know that they're a disappointment.
Dale, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's one of the very first places, I think, that when I moved to HRM that I visited, and I've visited lots of different areas in Nova Scotia, and lots of them are part of my favorites, but my most favorite part of Nova Scotia is that stretch that kind of starts at kind of Black Point and works its way down towards Chester. For whatever reason, it feels right for me there, and I spend a lot of time in there and that region and that area, part of Nova Scotia during the summer. I go to the beach there. I go to there's a couple of beaches that I visit along that stretch of highway, and I have spent some time at some of the establishments that Dale told us about, and at that gas station. And it's a great place. Man, they've done a wonderful job in Hubbard's. They've got just it's a community you can tell that is very proud of itself. Just listen to what Dale had to say, and. If you haven't been, or you haven't been for a long time, I encourage you to go to that part of Nova Scotia. Time for us to take another break here on the program. Open Hour continues on the other side. You're listening to The Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It's the open hour. The lines are open. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get right to the phones and say hello to Keith. Keith, how are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you doing today?
I am well, sir. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to make a point, 2 or 3 things here. I'll try to be quick.
Sure.
The pothole at the top of Bayview and Lacewood, that pothole, I noticed that yesterday.
Yeah.
That is back again. So when you're driving around that pothole, you got to be real super careful, because when you go to avoid it, you're putting your car almost into the inside lane.
Yeah.
And there's cars coming up beside you.
Yeah, it's dangerous. That's for sure.
You've got 2 folds of accidents waiting to happen there. So just to warn you, people that go around that pothole, just to be careful. Traffic coming up on the inside of you. The other thing I wanted to make a comment on, there's 2 kids that were making some sort of a half-assed plan for the schools.
Yeah, one in Manitoba and one in Bridgewater.
Yeah. Well, that's a very serious thing when that happens. So I think, in my opinion, they should have their day in court. But I think also there's a situation where those kids have to pay for what they did. I mean, putting other people's lives in danger, possibly killing people. They should be put in the youth detention center after everything is said and done, put in there until they're 18. And then when they're 18, they should be charged and sent to federal prison for some sort of a term to send a message to any other of those people out there that are thinking about doing something like that. And the third thing I wanted to say was, are you familiar with a guitar player named Randy Rhoads?
Absolutely. Played with Ozzy Osbourne.
Well, I just have a little thing on my phone here. I was a big fan, still am, and he died.
Yep.
Today
is it his
March
anniversary?
19th, 1982.
Yeah. Wow, it's a long time ago.
And that was in a plane crash, as you know.
Yep.
But anyway, there was a little quote here I wanted to read.
Sure.
So just bear with me. It says, in a short time, he forever changed heavy metal, blending classical influence with blistering speed and precision, helping define the sound of the 1980s. And I think that's a pretty accurate quote of what he did. So, that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Keith.
And hope you have a good day.
Rest in peace, Randy Rhoads. Appreciate it, Keith. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Keith's point about serving time in youth detention and then going into adult court after. I'm not a lawyer, and I stand to be corrected on this with somebody who is or understands the law. I don't think you can do that. I think that there's a sentence, and a sentence is a sentence. You can't get 2 sentences for the same crime. I think that is the way that works. But I think, and this is going to be a difficult one, folks, because both of these people are under the age. One of them's 15, so it's going to be difficult to prosecute this. I think unless they're tried as adults, which I don't know if that even can happen. But I think a message does need to be sent, and I think that it needs to be sent from the rooftops that this is unacceptable. And to Keith's point, if it's very public and there is a very severe penalty that's attached to it, I think that does send a message. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Todd. Todd, are you there?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
It's on your mind.
I live in Spryfield, Governor's Brook. So last year in January, I was outside fixing my truck, and I was underneath my truck, and I jumped out from my truck because they were blasting across the way in Green Acres, and I didn't think nothing of it. I come inside, and a couple hours later, I'm looking out my front window, and it's cracked.
Oh, no.
So then I called 311, and they gave me a reference number, and the city came within 3 days, and they said, yeah, it's from blasting. So they gave me the name of the contractor, and then I called him, and he said, oh, no, we're 800 meters away from your house. We're within our perimeters on my the seismic graph on his computer.
Right.
So he says, well, just pay to fix it and send us the bill.
Okay.
Well, I sent them the bill, and I haven't got paid.
Oh, no.
It's been since January. So I was just wondering if anybody out there had the same problem.
Well, this is the place to ask, Todd. That's unfortunate, and those window repairs are not cheap.
Yeah, no, it wasn't with the biggest window, but it wasn't cheap. It was in the thousands of dollars.
Right.
And I told the guy, I said, well, I can't every year I can't replace all the windows because you're blasting.
Right.
He said, well, they said it's because he has the seismic graph on his computer.
Yeah.
And the window guys what came here, they said it's from pressure. As pressure.
Yeah.
Like the air changes, and that's what cracked the window. Because it's cracked from the inside, right? The glass guys know right away, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
I was just wondering if anybody has any ideas. I mean, I tried talking to the MLA, but I moved here 6 years ago from Ontario, and I've been trying to get a hold of her for 6 years, and she's never ever got back to me.
Well, Todd, if anybody out there knows, they certainly will let us know, and I'll pass it along. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Where are we here? Let's welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, how are you?
Yes, good morning. I wanted to echo on the comment that your second last caller made in regard to the potential threat of another mass shooting at a local high school.
Yep.
I'm very pleased that the authorities did intervene, but the potential was there, and you may not agree, but I think if they lowered the Young Offenders Act, it might be putting a message out there that if you're old enough to do the crime, you're certainly old enough to do the time. And I'll leave you with that.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you. That has certainly been something that's been talked about. And we just went through, it was several years ago now, but we just went through a reimagining is the right way to say that, perhaps, of the Young Offenders Act, and it still has a lot of gaps in it. And I understand the intention of protecting young people from making young people mistakes, but when it comes to something like this, where this could have been a pretty significant tragedy if it was allowed to come to fruition, that then there's every case has a caveat in it, right? So the Young Offenders Act has certainly had its problems since its inception. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to Stephen. Stephen, how are you?
How's it going today, Dan?
Good. What's on your mind?
Just a little bit about that. I guess C9 kind of that
Sure.
gives the government powers to start invading people's privacy. I don't know if I've heard that correctly. I apologize. I'll have to look into it next time.
Well, it's designed to protect people from hate speech and from those kind of ills. But some of the parts of that bill are being called into question because it gives government lots of additional powers that they don't have now.
Okay. Anyway, it's just it brought into mind privacy. It's something I keep discussing with people. But why are people complaining about their lives being, stolen from them, and pictures and stuff like that, and information? Everybody's feeling like their lives are being invaded all the time.
Right.
And I mean, there's a TV show from way back when. I'm just going to give you a little quote here relating to this. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own. Now, I imagine there's a lot of people out there who feel like their lives aren't their own anymore because everything that they do is being recorded and stuff like that.
Mm.
And you're basically giving away your right to privacy. I mean, everybody feels like their lives are being invaded, and yet you're required nowadays to give your information to everybody. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry who looks, asks for it. And it's, this buddy had his photograph stolen from him on the computer.
Yep.
And it's like you're putting your lives on a piece of hardware, basically something without a lock. You can put for every key there's a lock. For every lock there's a key. Sorry, it's just I hear people complaining all the time. And people are just giving away their rights of freedom, the rights to their privacy, their human rights. I apologize if this sounds crazy. It's just that there's so much information related to this, and I just can't put it all into small sentences.
I get it. Stephen, I'm up against the break, my friend. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, I'll let you go. Sorry, Dan, I couldn't get it phrased more properly.
It's all good, Stephen. I appreciate the call. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Our lives are on our phones, right? At least mine is. It has become, as Stephen said, and most of it is if it is locked, it's certainly not a very sophisticated lock. These things get hacked quite frequently and all the time because those that want to do ills and harms to us are usually that many steps ahead of the protections that we use to protect our data and protect our identities and protect our pictures. It's a relatively new phenomenon, right? We haven't had this technology for a really long period of time, and now we're starting to see how those that want to do ills and harms to people are taking advantage of some of the things that Stephen was talking about. It's easy to say, well, just don't keep those things on your phone, right? But it's sometimes it's just not that simple. And we should have at least the ability to feel safe in cyberspace. But it certainly isn't a safe place, and it's getting less safe just about every day. Back after the break. All right, welcome back. Lines are wide open, folks. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the mailbag, and we get this one from Mark, and reads, we as consumers are going to be hurting hard with all of these factors driving up the cost of everything. I see lots of bankruptcies and insolvencies coming our way if things don't change drastically. When fuel costs skyrocket, everything goes up with it. Imagine running a large trucking company, for example. The cost of diesel now well over $2 a liter. Last I checked, it was $2.22. That company needs to make up that somehow, and I'm afraid it will be with layoffs. One solution is to drastically cut taxes, cut government, all levels in half. The track we are on is currently unsustainable. That comes to us from Mark. I'll agree with you almost on everything there, Mark. Cost of goods certainly will go up. Sylvain Charlebois agreed with me on that, and he didn't really want to talk about all the bad news that was coming. But it's a fact of life, right? If that diesel price goes up, we're going to see prices go up on everything that we buy, because everything that gets on a shelf comes on a truck some way, right? The one thing I will disagree with, and I know this isn't going to be a popular opinion, and I kind of broached this yesterday in the open hour, and I'll broach it again now, is that if cutting taxes, I don't think is the right approach. And I know, and I will say, and I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it every time I talk about this, that I don't want to pay any more tax than you do. But if you look at and we look at the provincial government as an example, we have $1 billion, what is it, 1.3 billion? Deficit. New Brunswick, $1.4 billion. $1 billion deficit in BC, $1 billion deficit in Alberta, I think. And large deficits right across the country in every jurisdiction. So is it not conceivable to say that the way that we are generating revenue in the provinces as a whole is broken? We saw a 1% reduction in taxes here in Nova Scotia, which didn't help the financial situation. It's been since the beginning of the Dexter government since we've seen an increase in tax in Nova Scotia. Politicians won't even consider this because it's political suicide. Ask Premier Dexter. But we can't go on and on and on and on with a 0% increase in tax. Everything's costing more now. Everything costs more at the store. Cost of lumber, of supplies, of fuel, of everything is much higher now than it was the last time that we had a tax increase in Nova Scotia. We've seen what happens in the municipal level when we kick this down the road. We're to a point now where we're looking at a 9.5% increase in your tax bill this year. And the city councilors and the mayor will tell you that this isn't a one-off. This is going to happen for the next 4 years and probably beyond that. Is there waste? Yes. Can government spend money better? Yes. But does it equal $1.4 billion? I'll leave that to you. Hello, Wayne.
Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I'm going to tell you why we're down in the hole in the billion.
Why is that?
That building that the old Nova Scotia Art Gallery used to be in, across from Parliament building there. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Okay.
But finance used to be there. And they brought in a guy to do a biometric study of all the staff because people were having back pains. The chairs sucked. The desk sucked.
Right.
The way they were all set up. It was just over $250,000 to get everybody studied and set up.
Okay.
They got a new boss, and the new boss decided, well, I got no parking spot down here, so I want to go back to the Maritime Center because that's where I was working for the last 10 or 15 years. So they made everybody from that building that was on that floor pack everything up and leave a building that they're not paying rent in and go up to the Maritime Center where they're paying an arm and a leg for space. Now, here's the other one. And I'm not getting this from the horse's back end. I'm getting this right from the horse's front end.
Got it.
Here's the other story that was told to me by this person. She said, we got 60 places for people to sit. And now they're trying to figure out how to fit 170 people in where 60 people sit. So when this person told me when she went back to work, she asked where's her special desk and her special chair and her special keypad and all this stuff that she had gotten, nobody had a clue where it was at. They just shipped everybody off to another building that they're paying rent in and left the building that they weren't paying rent in. And that's why we're in the hole.
Okay. Thanks, Wayne.
Cheers.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Last word today goes to Steve. Steve, how are you?
Good, Dan. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. What's on your mind?
Just a quick thing. I'm born and raised in Nova Scotia, lived there my whole life, and raised kids and everything like most people. Now, when we look at the province, like when we talk about, Alberta and out west and in the States, like we should be a very wealthy province. Like we have forestry, we have fishing, we have natural gas, we have more oil off the coast of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland than we know what to do with. This and North America's deepest natural harbor, and with our Navy and everything here, like Nova Scotia should be the envy of North America. Like we shouldn't have the wants and the needs that we have. And like I said, the guy saying before about the roads, and he's right? So there's really, you really need a strong politicians to come in and say, listen, we're going to take advantage of the oil, the natural gas, the lumber, the fishing, and we're going to make this place, a good hub center, first of all, for Canada, if not an envy for North America. You just need strong leaders that are willing to, step up and say, okay, let's use what we have and not give it away for a fraction of this cost. Let's use it for what it is and get on the world stage and be the envy.
I think that the answer to your question, Steve, was right at the end what you said there, right? It is that we end up giving it away because we can't build it ourselves. We have to even look at Win West. He wants the private sector to build that, and they're not going. They know he wants to build it, so they've got him at a disadvantage off the hop.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, man.
And we yep. All right. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Appreciate all the calls, everybody. We're going to do this again tomorrow. The Friday Free for All will take place at 11 o'clock. I hope that you can join us, and I look forward to the conversation. I certainly learned something each and every day that we do this. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we broached this in the open hour yesterday. The New Brunswick government in its budget says that they're going to install a toll at Aulac to catch out-of-province people traveling across the New Brunswick-Nova Scotia border and nail them with a toll. That's not sitting well with a lot of Nova Scotians, including the independent MLA for Cumberland North, Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin. And we'll talk to Elizabeth when we come back. Welcome back as we carry on here on the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Happy afternoon. Very glad you're able to spend some time with us here. We've had a lot to discuss about the Nova Scotia budget as of late. It's not often that Nova Scotians, though, take notice of what's happening across the border in New Brunswick. Usually it's their budget. They do their thing and we do our thing. But there's an item in the budget this time around that has caught the attention of some here in Nova Scotia, particularly those living very close to that border, that could have an impact on their day-to-day, and that is a plan by New Brunswick to install a toll booth or some kind of tolling system at Aulac, which will charge a fee, which I don't think we know what the fee is yet, to out-of-province plates that are crossing into and out of Nova Scotia. Of course, there's a pretty close relationship between communities on the New Brunswick side of the border and on the Nova Scotia side of the border. And I know our next guest is certainly right in the middle of that. That's the MLA for Cumberland North, independent, Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin. Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Dan.
This is a little bit out of the ordinary that people in our part of the world are taking exception to something that's in the New Brunswick budget.
Well, it's going to dramatically affect all Nova Scotians, but I would say disproportionately the people living in our area of Cumberland County, and people are not happy.
Elizabeth, tell me about the relationship that people living in Cumberland County have with those living across the border in Sackville and as far as Moncton.
Yes, thank you for that. So people living in Cumberland County on the northern side of the Cobequid Pass have very close relationship and ties with people of southern New Brunswick. So Sackville as well as the city of Moncton. So family, we have a lot of shared custody situations or relatives like parents, grandparents living on either side of the border. People have shared medical services on either side of the border. People go back and forth from the Cumberland Regional up to Moncton City, as well as education. A lot of people choose to study at Mount Allison University or University of Moncton because it's only 10 minutes or 45 minutes away. And then, of course, work. About 30 to 40% of our people living in Cumberland actually work in southern New Brunswick. And it's also a major retail area. If we want to go out for, a nice Italian dinner, we're going to go to Moncton. And it's a place that is regularly used by the people of our area, and an extra tariff, tax, toll, whatever you want to call it, is going to be quite detrimental to our people.
And we just got rid of a toll that folks up there would pay in a lot, and that was the one at the Cobequid Pass, right?
I know. And honestly, people in Cumberland are really feeling like pawns. Right now, they have been used by the Nova Scotia government to have to pay an extra tax for over 20 years. And now hopefully it won't go forward, but possibly looking at having to pay a toll to get into New Brunswick. It's certainly not what we need. And we're asking the New Brunswick government to press pause.
You mentioned some of the financial implications on residents that live in your part of the world, Elizabeth, but this is also going to impact people that are coming to visit, right?
Absolutely. And I would also mention, the Chignecto Isthmus is the main trade corridor for Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. So $94 billion passes through that trade corridor every year. On average, each day you have about 2,400 trucks, so over 2,000 trucks taking goods back and forth. And I'm also asking the Premier of New Brunswick to take a closer look at her own financial cost-benefit analysis, because 18% of that that's traveling across the Chignecto Isthmus is actually destined for New Brunswick. So $17 billion worth of goods travels from the Port of Halifax or the Halifax Airport into New Brunswick. And if they're trucks hauling the goods from Nova Scotia, then they're going to be having to pay an extra tax tariff on the goods that they're receiving. So it's going to be detrimental for the people of New Brunswick as well.
Elizabeth, I think I know the answer to this next question, but this came out of the blue. There was obviously no consultation.
No consultation. I was looking at comments from the Minister of Finance from New Brunswick, and he said that there was no consultation with Nova Scotia before this was announced, which, in politics, there's often more than meets the eye. There's often more going on behind the scenes. So I have to ask some questions like, where's the Atlantic Premiers Council in all of this? Where is the Premier of Nova Scotia on all of this? I haven't heard him make any comments. I'm not sure if I've missed it or not, but he should be making a response and representing all Nova Scotia, including Cumberland County, on this issue. Also, we saw the Minister of Finance from New Brunswick make a reference that there's some sort of a federal agreement that protects the people of Quebec.
I'd like to see that agreement.
We want to see that. And my staff and I have looked. We can't find anything. So why is the federal government protecting Quebec and not Nova Scotia? A lot of questions that need to be answered.
And I asked the question yesterday on the air here, Elizabeth, well, why not a toll booth if we're going to do that? Why not at the Quebec border and why not at the Maine border?
Exactly. If it's really a revenue issue, they wouldn't be putting it in Aulac. They'd be putting it as people enter from the United States or from Quebec. So I do question what's happening behind the scenes. There's been some tension, I would say, between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Recently, we've seen Premier Houston suggest that New Brunswick should pay a higher percentage of the cost of the repairs for the Chignecto Isthmus. I've heard rumors about tension between our provinces regarding healthcare and reciprocal billings. So I do question, is this really a symptom of a bigger problem? And I would encourage our Premier of Nova Scotia to work with New Brunswick on this and work with our fellow maritime provinces. We've seen him do a lot with Doug Ford in Ontario, but I think there's more value for Nova Scotianers if he worked closely with our direct neighbors in New Brunswick and PEI. I think living where I do, I really see detrimental impacts of interprovincial barriers. This is just another one of those. We're supposed to be removing them. And I will say, back in the fall, I was up in Ottawa for some meetings on the isthmus and other issues related to my people. And I went to question period 2 days in a row. And not once in those 2 days was Atlantic Canada or the Maritimes mentioned. Not once. Everything was Quebec and Ontario and Western Canada. So I believe, and others believe, that we need to be strengthening our region, our maritime region, and becoming more relevant economically and politically in Canada. The only way that's going to happen is if we start working together. So that needs to be made a priority by our Premier here in Nova Scotia, whether it's Premier Houston or whoever it may be in the future. This needs to be our priority: maritime unity and strengthening our region.
Elizabeth, you mentioned the Chignecto Isthmus. Where are we at with that as that football goes back and forth?
It does, and I was surprised to learn that our premier was, having tension with New Brunswick on this issue, because last May there was an actual agreement signed by our province, New Brunswick, and the federal government, which was a shared arrangement. New Brunswick are paying 25%, Nova Scotia 25%, and the federal government 50% to have that work done. There's been no updates from our provincial government. I've asked for that, and they just won't provide it. There's no timeline, and so, of course, there's no accountability or transparency for the taxpayers, which I don't agree with. I think we deserve to know when the work is going to be finished and how much money it's going to actually cost. And there should be a timeline that anyone should be able to go on a website and see where are we at, where's the progress. But they just refuse to do that for some reason.
Elizabeth, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
That is Elizabeth Smith-McCrossin, the independent MLA for Cumberland North, as the New Brunswick government continues to push forward with a plan for a toll that will hit vehicles coming from and going to Nova Scotia. No timeline yet. They have to build the infrastructure, and no idea yet what that toll is going to be, but I will guarantee you that it's going to hit the pocketbooks of those that use that crossing an awful lot. And I think that we have not heard the last of this, particularly from the trucking industry, which will be hit harder than most, I would think. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we're going to refocus our attention on some of the cuts that were announced in the provincial budget. We had a conversation with our next guest right in the aftermath of that, and when it dealt with the publishing industry and the impacts that those cuts were going to have. We had a conversation with the premier last week about it, and he said, don't worry, we're going to look after the publishing industry. But the general manager at Nimbus Publishing, Terrilee Bulger, is taking exception to that. We'll have a conversation with her when we return. You're listening to The Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. All right, if you've been following the provincial budget, you know that there were several cuts that were announced, and some of them have been repealed, but others are moving forward. And one of them that's moving forward is that a significant cut to support for publishing and publishing companies in Nova Scotia. We had a conversation with the premier. That question came up during our open hour, and he said that not to worry, that the province was going to look after the publishing industry. And our next guest says that doesn't appear to be happening, at least the way that the government is laying it out. General Manager at Nimbus Publishing is Terrilee Bulger, and Terrilee joins us on the phone. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. So this is kind of where we're at now, right? This cut's coming up, and the province says, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of the industry, but that's just not happening.
So I missed the interview this morning. I'd be curious to see what the premier said. But what happened last week in the legislature was that when the NDP asked about the elimination, it was not a cut of the program, to the program. It's the elimination of the Publisher Assistance Fund.
Right.
When they asked about that, they said, the response was that, publishers can apply to the Creative Industries Fund, and that the publishers have access to funding through the Nova Scotia Loyal campaign was the response. And so we responded by saying this is completely false, what they're saying, because the Publisher Assistance Fund is an operating grant that was dedicated just to our operations, to help us be able to compete and be able to, even be sustainable in a world full of multinational book publishers. And that program is eliminated. It's true, we could have access to project funding from the Creative Industries Fund. That's just projects up to a maximum of $30,000. It's nothing towards operating. It's nothing towards helping us be able to
keep the lights on.
Keep the lights on, exactly. It's matching funding. It's just little projects you can do for export only. So that has, and that was cut too. That program was cut by 40%. It was already fully maxed out. We did get some project funding through it every last few years, but it's gotten more and more competitive, and it's harder and harder to get that money, and it was cut by 40%. So, and as far as the Nova Scotia Loyal idea goes, that's great. We love that program. It's fantastic, but it wasn't money for the publishers. The $10 vouchers went to retailers to give out to the consumers to buy Nova Scotia books. People may not have bought those books anyway. Right. But we love the program. It's just was not money to help our operations.
So Terrilee, with no access to these funds, or at least the funds not designed to do what you need them to do, I guess the burning question here is what happens to you next? Now that this funding this program is being removed, and you don't have access to these creative industry funds for what you were using that other program for, what happens to Nimbus Publishing and others like you across the province?
Well, it'll be different for all publishers, what they are, where they have to cut. I mean, it's cutting in operations, and so we, either can, just do less books. We can, cut wherever we can in operations. I mean, this program was already a cut to us. We were getting a lot more through the Creative Industries Fund before they introduced this program. Right. And so there's nowhere left for us to cut. We're already pretty lean. So it means fewer books. We're cutting back on the number of books that we can, which also results in less revenues and less money to creators, and just trickles down all the way along. So, yeah, fewer books, fewer cuts anywhere else that we can find in operating. That might mean layoffs. Everybody's doing different things. Some publishers have just completely closed for submissions. It's really bad. It's not a good time.
Yeah, no doubt, and we could certainly appreciate that. Terrilee, tell me a little bit about what your writers are telling you. We've seen obviously them take to the streets. I mean, we saw a pretty good turnout at Province House when the protests were on. Are they telling you that they're going to shop elsewhere? They're going to try and get published out of province, or are they just not going to write?
Well, right now they're fighting.
Right.
They're doing what they can to get them the support that they need. The publishers have been fantastic. The Writers Union of Canada came out and did an amazing statement saying that, these cuts are a threat to our cultural sovereignty. I mean, this is the reality of how hard it is to get Canadian voices heard in our mediums, right? So it's already almost impossible, but it's not quite impossible. About between 5 and 10% of all books sold in Canada are published by Canadian publishers. Wow. I mean, the number is very low. It'll be lower, so right. It's that much harder for Canadian writers, Canadian stories to be told. So they're furious. It's not just writers here either in Nova Scotia, even though 70% of our books that we publish here in Nova Scotia are written by Nova Scotian authors. It's writers everywhere, just because it's so much. Our landscape is so much dominated by non-Canadian voices. For sure. Mostly American, but any other country that speaks English, their books are flooded into our market, so the UK and Australia and all kinds of other places. Their books fill the bookstore shelf, so it's that much more difficult to be able to get the books onto the shelves to begin with when there's a program cuts like this.
What's next steps, Terrilee? We have not begun to fight, correct?
Well, we've begun to fight. Right. Next steps is I'm, going to be at the Public Bills Committee next week to do a presentation. If this bothers you, definitely make sure that your MLA knows, and write to the Public Bills Committee or present a Public Bills Committee. We're just make this your feelings on this known, because it is a huge. It will be a huge loss. Every book that we don't publish is a huge loss to our cultural economy.
We've seen the Premier change his mind already. It's not like he ever doesn't do it. So the more pressure, the better chances are he will.
Well, I agree with you on that, and I think the Premier has listened to Nova Scotians in the past, and I think he has been able to pivot, and I'm hoping that that will be the case. And it sounds like, I don't know, I'd have to go back and listen. What did he say this morning?
Well, it was on Friday when we had our sit down with him, and it was essentially what you said, is that they had you have access to the Creative Industry Fund and Nova Scotia Loyal. That's pretty much what he said.
Oh, okay. So so that's not support. So
fair enough.
Those are, and even the Nova Scotia Loyal, that program it was a pilot program. It's completed, and we haven't heard anything about redoing it. So
right, for sure. Terrilee, I know you're busy, and it's tough times. I appreciate you spending a couple minutes with us.
Anytime, just let me know.
For sure. That's Terrilee Bulger, of Nimbus Publishing here in Nova Scotia, as that fight continues up against program eliminations and budget cuts. We're going to take a break for the news here on the show. When we come back, a story that came across my desk over the last couple of days that is part of the tale of the Halifax explosion, and something that I didn't know, and I'm sure that many of you didn't know, involving the Halifax explosion, a bell, and Halifax Harbour Bridges. Stephen Proctor from HHB will be joining us right after the news. Well, we were going to dig into a segment about history, and we're going to do that in the second. But if you're listening to the newscast, you heard that Ottawa's announced a new deal for new rifles for the Canadian Army with Colt Canada that replaced the C7 and the C9. I started my military career with the FN, which was the precursor to the C7. I was there for the C7 rollout, so that story certainly kind of makes me feel old. Anyway, I'll look forward to seeing what the new the service rifle is going to look like. This next story is for all of you history buffs out there, and some of you have been around much in Halifax much longer than I, and you may very well remember a bell that used to hang on the Angus L. MacDonald Bridge. Around 1955, from what I understand, that bell was on there and then kind of just disappeared and ended up in storage, and that's where it remains today. But now officials with Halifax Harbour Bridges are curious as to the history of said bell. It could be 126 years old and may have been part of the Halifax explosion. Very pleased to welcome back to the program Communications Manager over there at Halifax Harbour Bridges, Stephen Proctor. Stephen, how are you?
Good, Dan. Good. Even after listening to your newscast.
It just makes me feel old, that's all. Stephen, this bell is quite the mystery, isn't it?
It is. It's a 250-pound brass bell that did sit on a truss of the MacDonald Bridge for when the bridge was opened, or shortly after the bridge was opened. But it's clearly a bell from it's engraved on it. It says 1899. So it was 50 years before the bridge had provenance of it, and we don't know what that provenance was. So we're turning to the public and people who've been around Halifax for a long time to see if they know anything about this bell. It was a Manili bell from 1899. Manili bells are famous in terms of churches. There's several in Halifax, the churches that have it, and they're at the Halifax Explosion Memorial. Those are the same kind of bell, although there were a later version, a 1925 bell that was there was a memorial to those who died in the Halifax explosion.
Right.
So we just think that the 1899 date is really curious, and is it plausible that it was actually one of the bells that was
blown off one of the 4 North End churches when the explosion happened, and sort of rattled around someplace for 50 years until the bridges took it. Now, there's no actual documentation that I've been able to find from the bridges in terms of, us buying them or acquiring them or however they got on the bridges, and that's probably just a lack of documentation. But I've been through all of the minutes of all of the meetings, and there's no reference to the bells there. So trying to turn to the community, social community, to help us out.
Kind of a shame that this historic bell has been kind of locked away in storage for so long.
Yeah, well, it's only been in storage for 6 years, but it's been forgotten for since the mid '50s. When it was originally used, we believe it was originally used as a bell that was sounded when a boat or ship was going underneath the bridge as a warning. It's right just under the bottom of the middle of the tower, so that makes sense. And it was, went into disuse when we got an electronic foghorn, and then now we use Wi-Fi systems and electronics that are more sophisticated than any of that. But it was sitting out there till about 6 years ago when our maintenance crew was kind of curious about it. They've seen it, they knew it was there, but they didn't know anything about it. So they actually roped it up to the top of the bridge, which would be no small challenge for 4 maintenance guys. Put it on the bridge deck, and then looked at the date and said, "Wow, this is an old bell. This might be part of an exhibit or something like that." Then priorities happen, and they say, "Okay, well, we'll do it sometime," and it just got into storage. And we just recently bulldozed that storage facility, which means we had to clear out the storage locker. And we thought, okay, this is the time now to do something, find out more about this bell, because this could be an interesting page in Halifax history.
Could be a big part of Halifax history if it was involved in the explosion.
Yeah, so we're turning to the public for some information, working with the Nova Scotia museums. They've got a great collection of bells. They're interested in the HHB bell mystery, so hopefully this might generate some leads that we'll be able to do something to have a greater understanding of the provenance of the bell.
Now that bell has lost its storage home, Stephen, what do you have plans for it? What are you going to do with it?
Well, right now, as long as people are interested in seeing and looking about this bell, we've moved it to the front foyer of the actual bridge office just off the McDonald Bridge. And so people can, it's in a secure facility, but people can buzz the door and come in and look at the bell. There's only several words on the bell, just the date, and then it says Manili Bell Company, Troy, New York, and then the date. Some bells have engraved like the church that they're going to,
right,
that kind of thing, but it's not there.
It got here somewhere if it was made in New York.
Well, that's right, and we've gone through the records of the Bell Company. The Bell Company actually went belly up or closed in the 1950s, but a significant listing of their bells is still online in ledgers and stuff like that. Bells made in 1899 only list like Syracuse, New York, and the Midwest, and so I don't know. Maybe we traded for something from Syracuse in the Midwest. I don't know. This is part of the mystery.
So if somebody has some info, Stephen, or they want to get a closer look, or they want to help you out, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, people can email us at bridges@hdbc.ns.ca. That would be the easiest way for them to say, hey, I was there when my great grandfather worked on the bridge, and I remember the bell clearly, and we got it from X, Y, and Z. But they can stop by the office. We don't have a lot of parking. It's awkward to get to, but it is on display in the atrium or in the foyer of the McDonald main office at 125 Wise Road.
Bells are meant to be heard. Stephen, it would be nice to hear it ring again, wouldn't it?
It would be great, and even if we don't hear it again, it would be nice for it to find out where it was, and we will happily return it to that home base.
Stephen, I appreciate your time, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Have a good one. That's Stephen Proctor from Halifax Harbour Bridges, a 126-year-old bell mystery. It was built in 1899, was hanging off the bridge for several years, and now ended up in storage. and now we're trying to figure out where it came from. Bells just don't appear out of thin air. We're quite expensive, and were purchased for a purpose. And as I said before, bells are meant to be heard, and boy, would it be nice to hear a 1899 bell ring again in Halifax. Time for us to take another break here on the show. On the other side of it, we've been talking about this for a couple days now, a conversation with an Oscar winner. Tamara Deverell won an Oscar for Best Production Design on her work on the Guillermo del Toro film Frankenstein, and got her award at the recent broadcast and called out the Premier of Nova Scotia during it. We'll have a conversation with Tamara right after the break. Did you watch the Oscars? Well, many people did, and many people, of course, were working their way through the broadcast and saw some of the wins and some of the losses, and of course, some Nova Scotia content was all part of the Oscars this time around. And our next guest was named the winner for the Oscar in Best Production Design for the work on the film Frankenstein. And I'm very pleased to welcome to the show today to tell us a little bit about that, Tamara Deverell. Tamara, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Congratulations on your Oscar. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, especially being back in quiet Cape Breton now. It's it's fun.
A bit of a difference between Cape Breton and Hollywood, right?
That's for sure. I think I picked Cape Breton, though.
Most people would, I think.
It was good for a ride, but home is home.
Tell me a little bit about Oscar night. How did that unfold for you?
Well, I mean, there's events leading up to Oscar night, which so it's not just one night. You know, I got to meet my co-nominees, which was very exciting to me to be with my peers, and we did a talk together for young art department people. The night itself seemed endless, and then the moment of terror, having to go up and make a speech when we won. Terror and joy, I should say, terror and joy. It was very exhilarating, and especially of note for me, Barbra Streisand came up. There was the in memoriam kind of section right before my award, and Barbra Streisand came up and was singing the way we were, which kind of calmed me in a strange way because I was so nervous. But yeah, it was very exciting, and they sat me behind our director, Guillermo del Toro, so I got to hug Dan Lausten, our wonderful Danish cinematographer, and Guillermo, and then some of the actors, including Jacob Elordi, who is, like part of the family. So it was really fun.
Tamara, tell me a little bit about the journey. How does Tamara from Cape Breton end up working with Guillermo del Toro on Frankenstein?
Well, I'm not originally from Cape Breton, I have to say that. We started living here part-time about 8 years ago and fell in love with it so much we built a house, my husband and I, who also worked on Frankenstein as the unit stills photographer. So all those photos you see are my husband, Ken Warner. We fell in love with it. But I'm originally from Vancouver, so I kind of have gone coast to coast. Spent most of my career working in Toronto, a little bit in Montreal. So I'm a real, and I was born in the prairies, so go figure, I'm a real Canadian. But we love it here, so Nova Scotia is now home.
Right, and tell me about the experience of creating those designs, that production design. That's got to be a lot of fun every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard work, and I certainly don't do it alone, so kudos to my team, and it's a team of incredibly, artists and incredible craftspeople and artists and set designers, and all of them out of Toronto. We also shot in the UK. We had a fantastic team there. So, Canada's on the world-class stage in terms of designers. I hear some of my crews actually coming to work in Halifax now, and some of the people that I've grown up with in the industry. So I feel like the Halifax industry is booming, which is a good thing. And I'm looking forward to having some of them come up and visit me in Cape Breton, as long as I can not work.
Right. It's going to sit on the front porch, right? That kind of deal?
Well, what I'd like to do, I tried to take this year off and do some of my own artwork, and maybe I'll do, a graphic novel that I started. I've just been working for so long. It's time for me to shift gears a little. However, if a really good project comes up, that I can't resist, I do it. It's just that Frankenstein is a hard act to follow.
Right.
We had so many great sets to build. I'd always wanted to build a boat. We built a boat. That was a true passion. Building Frankenstein's lab and all the different parts of his lab tower, was just such a dream, a designer's dream, really.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that it's really the sets and all of the gear makes the story, right? It's just a story about a guy with bolts in his neck, right? So.
Yeah, we didn't have bolts.
Well,
We had Jacob Elordi. We didn't need bolts. I'm also the co-chair of the Inverness County Centre for the Arts, arts and culture being one of the reasons I came to Cape Breton.
Right.
So I've got a bit of a fight with some of my culture centre team members. We've gathered together in Cape Breton to try and fight these cuts to the arts.
And you used your win on Oscar night to raise some international awareness on that.
Exactly. Take that,
right?
Government. Because look, I made a career out of the arts, and there's a lot of young people who are in my shoes, that would like to make a career in the arts. It's economic. It's viable. It attracts tourists. We have a big tourist trade here in Cape Breton. It's economically viable. I say that because it seems to speak to, I would hope it speaks to more people. But arts are really important. Arts and culture are what makes us human, what sets us apart from all the other animals in the world, is our art and our culture and our music. So, I'm really going to use this Oscar to talk about this.
Well, I think that you've absolutely earned the right to do that, and I think you're a reason why we need to continue to support the arts here in Nova Scotia, because there are some really talented people that live in our part of the world, right? And you're an example. And you're an example of where they can go. I mean, you went right to the Oscar stage.
Exactly, and I just want to point out my co-nominee Shane Vio is from Dartmouth originally,
right.
Now still living in Nova Scotia, travels around the world. He's won 2 Oscars, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've both won BAFTAs, which is like the British Academy Awards.
Yep.
I'm not alone. I'm one of 2 Nova Scotians who've won this accolade.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you may have already answered this next question, Tamara, but now that you've got the statue on your mantelpiece there in Cape Breton, what's next for you? Do you have any other big projects? I know you said you're working on a graphic novel, but any more movie projects in the hopper?
There's a couple, but I'm biding my time. I think I have an agent in LA who would love me to work endlessly because then he makes money. But I'm gonna wait for the right one. I've got the sun is out here. I don't know if it's out in Halifax, but it's out. It's beautiful. The ice is melting. So I'm thinking about my garden.
Right.
We have a new dog, Django. I'm thinking about him. You may have heard him barking in the background. So got some dog walks in there. And, I came here to hike and enjoy the scenery while I'm still able. So I'm going to do a bit of that for sure.
Well, Tamara, congratulations on your Oscar win and all the best in the future. And keep us in mind, will you?
Thank you. Yeah, and support the arts, everybody. Come up and visit our art center.
We'll do that. Tamara, appreciate it. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
That's Tamara Deverell. She's a production designer and now can put at the end of her business card, Oscar winner for Best Production Design. She was awarded that at the Oscars a week ago, and that's for her work on the film Frankenstein with Guillermo del Toro, who was the driving force behind that. And one of the examples of why, and I know this question gets asked a lot, but it's an example of why it's important to support the arts, because it's not just museums and galleries, it's an industry. And Tamara was telling us that some of her colleagues from Hollywood are coming into Nova Scotia to do some work here, and that generates income, that generates revenue, that creates jobs, right? And Nova Scotians that benefit from some of these government programs go on to do extremely big things. They win Oscars, and we do it a lot here, which is outstanding given that we're just about 1 million people, and we're in the complete east coast of Canada, about as far away in North America from Hollywood as you can get. And we still succeed at it. Congratulations to Tamara. And to everybody who took their Oscars home this past week, it's pretty cool. We're going to, of course, just about wrap up the show here. And tomorrow's Friday, right? That means it's time for the Friday Free-for-All. I look forward to this each and every day. And the last couple of weeks, it's been pretty good, and we're going to continue to do it as long as you continue to participate in it. And that is with the Friday Free-for-All. It's your opportunity to lead the discussion. I try, sometimes unsuccessfully, to keep my trap shut and let you lead the conversation and get stuff off your chest as we head into the weekend. I certainly look forward to it, and I hope that you do as well. Tomorrow on the program, Tim Power is not available, so we're going to talk a little U.S. politics. We haven't connected up with our friend from the University of Maine, Mark Brewer, for some time. He's going to join us here on the show. One of the questions raised during Science Files this week was the now infamous burn safe map in Nova Scotia. Why is it red from 8 until 2? How does it work? What's the wildfire risk in Nova Scotia as we head into another spring? A conversation with the manager of forest protection at the Department of Natural Resources. That's Scott Tingley. He's going to join us on the show tomorrow. I hope that you can stick around for that. Alistair Alders will be here as we set you up for a weekend. I wish you had better news. It looks like it's going to be wet, but we'll take the weather. We'll take the wet so it doesn't start the burn. It all connects, folks. And Cecil will be here as well tomorrow in his regular spot to talk sports as we head into yet another weekend. My enduring gratitude to all of our guests that joined us today and shared their knowledge. I learned something every day. Thank you to all of you who picked up the phone and dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. I look forward to our conversation tomorrow on the Friday Free-for-All. Thanks behind the glass to Vanessa Vandenez, who will be away tomorrow. She's already celebrating. So Blake will be filling in for her tomorrow behind the glass. But anyway, thank you, Vanessa, for all the work that you do each and every day. We talked about Cape Breton today. We talked about Hubbard's. We talked about places in between and all the way over up to Cumberland County and how wonderful this province is and how lucky we are to live here. Yes, it has its problems. Yes, we have our bumps in the road. And yes, we have potholes. But it's still a beautiful place to live. People travel for thousands of miles to come here, spend thousands of dollars to do what we can do each and every day, and that is get out there and enjoy what we have here in Nova Scotia. Have a fantastic evening, a good afternoon, and a good night, folks, and be well. And remember, it's important to be kind to one another.